Hello, welcome to Actuary Voices, the podcast of the American Academy of Actuaries. I'm your host for this episode, Ted Gotsch, and today our guest is Geralyn Trujillo, Senior Director of Public Policy at the Academy. Geralyn, welcome to Actuary Voices.
Thanks, Ted.
It's great to have you. I guess to start, Geralyn, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got where you are today.
Nothing like asking me a hard question right off the top, Ted. I actually started my career here at the Academy about 20 years ago as the state health policy analyst, where I was really lucky to learn about insurance from the very beginning from actuaries. And in the time in between, I've actually stayed within public policy and advocacy, working for a variety of nonprofits and for-profit organizations. And when the opportunity came back to lead the public policy team here at the Academy, I just couldn't say no. So I've been really lucky to be able to take advantage of the fact that I know who and what actuaries are and they do, and really help intersect with them in terms of public policy and advocacy. And today, that means I'm leading the team that includes the 5 practice councils here at the Academy, as well as the research team. So I'm really excited to be back.
Well, right off the bat, a big project the Academy started this year is the new 2024 Elections Issues Clearinghouse website. What was the impetus behind that?
Well, thinking through what was going to be on everybody's minds this year, clearly you can't get away from the presidential election. And while historically the Academy has offered perspectives and engagement on many, many issues, during election years, we've typically really highlighted just 2, Medicare and Social Security. But given all of the work that we do across all of the practice areas, it seems like it was a great opportunity to really kind of take advantage of all of the work product and the insights that actuaries have in public policy, and take advantage of the relationships that we have with legislative and regulatory offices. So we thought, rather than looking at all of these issues in isolation, we'd create a one-stop shop to really show the breadth of topics that the Academy deals with. And given that elections are broader than just the public programs of Medicare and Social Security, and that our volunteers have been working over the years on various impactful issues, we really wanted an opportunity to highlight everything we've been doing just under the rubric of the 2024 election. So it's really all about continuing the conversations we've been having. And that includes all of our stakeholders, not just public policymakers. So we're talking about the media, trade organizations, our members, and the general public. And this way, you can really find all of our various work products, including our webinars, contingencies, articles, and more in a one-stop shop. And it really does help underscore the fact that the Academy is an unbiased and balanced resource. We're nonpartisan, and we really are just here to help evaluate and identify proposed solutions that are the general consciousness for today.
Well, that is great to hear that the Academy is sort of expanding its view into many different issues. Indeed, the Clearinghouse is focused on 6 mega issues: healthcare, retirement security, climate change, cybersecurity, AI, and risk management. Why were those 6 topics selected?
Well, what else do you talk about in a 2024 election year, Ted? These are issues that we've been talking about for a while. I think if you pick up any newspaper, you turn on any news report, and heck, even as you're commuting into the office and you're sitting on the metro, you're probably going to hear some sort of conversation about one or more of those issues. And what we really wanted to do is highlight the fact that the Academy has been talking about all of these issues for a while now. These are not new, and we really have a unique perspective to offer when we're talking about what are potential solutions and what policymakers and decision makers should be thinking about when we're talking about them. The fact that we have volunteers who have real world insights and experience on all of these goes unsaid, but I think sometimes we take for granted that everybody understands that we have been talking about healthcare and retirement security for a while. And I think when you start talking especially about newer topics like AI and cyber, it's really important to underscore the amount of work and effort and energy across the practice areas that actuaries have been giving to these issues. Plus, these are all issues that hit us at home, right? It's impactful in our neighborhoods. It's not just for the nation and the international stage. And so really kind of highlighting these and elevating them to the clearinghouse, we wanted to make sure that people understood we're a trusted resource. So come and take a look at and see what we have to say.
No, I mean, that's an excellent point. I know it's the Academy is really in the policy realm, sort of expanding beyond the clearinghouse into other areas to sort of make known to the public and to policymakers sort of the broad depth of issues that we discuss. One of those is the Academy debuting its blog called Actuarially Sound, which complements that new website, but also stretches beyond those 6 mega issues into other areas. What was the idea behind starting the blog?
Well, I was looking around and saying, what else in the world can I do to create work for everybody else on the team while we're talking about all of these issues? And I said, hey, the one thing we're kind of missing is a blog. But, I think when I was thinking about blogs and how we can better communicate all of the work that we're doing, it seems like a great opportunity for us to really give sound bites of what it is that we're working on and potentially be a great opportunity to kind of draw people in and understand some of the work that we're doing. The blog is also really intended not just externally for decision makers and policymakers to understand what some of the issues are of the day, but it's also for our members to really help understand what public policy is. I think sometimes I take for granted that I understand what it is. And we work in DC, right? So a lot of times we use that inside the beltway, inside baseball analogy that not everybody really understands. And if we're going to be the Academy, where the big thrust of our activities around public policy, I want to make sure that people understand what I'm talking about when I'm trying to recruit them to come and volunteer and do work for us. And so the blog not only will focus on the issues that we're talking about, like the mega issues with the clearinghouse, it will also spotlight activities like webinars, and then also do something that I'm calling Public Policy 101, which gives you a taste of what is an external stakeholder. Go through some of the organizations that we consider to be our audience and give a better idea of exactly what it is we mean when we say we want to impact public policy and how we actually do that here at the Academy.
Well, the clearinghouse and the blog are 2 big sort of initiatives on their own, but you have anything else up your sleeve as we move forward in the coming months for, other sort of outlets that people should be aware of?
I'm going to take that as a challenge, Ted. I always have 1 or 2 ideas up my sleeve and trying to think about what we can do new or differently or keep doing the same as we work on all of the issues of the day. I think one of the things that I just try to keep in mind every time we talk about how we're going to expand our discussions, how we're going to do a better job of making sure that the work that our volunteers gets out there into the environment where it can really help influence public policy is really just stay true to the Academy's mission, right? Our mission is to serve the public and the U.S. actuarial profession by providing leadership, objective expertise, and actuarial advice on risk and financial security issues. And as sexy as that sounds, I think sometimes we take for granted that that's what our mission is and that's what we're supposed to do. And so every day I'm looking and thinking through and working with all of you on the public policy team, as well as our colleagues here at the Academy on staff in communications and in marketing and in our education department and our membership team, thinking about how we get all the information that we're generating, all of the great work products that we're doing, and how do we effectively communicate that to the outside world. And I think we all know that everybody absorbs and prefers receiving information in different ways. And that's one of the great things of these new experiments of, doing this podcast, looking at blogs, looking at the clearinghouse. It's all a mechanism to make sure that we're getting information out to people in ways that they can receive it. And then hopefully they like it so much, they're going to tell a friend and maybe even recruit a couple more volunteers for us going forward. So no pressure, just coming up with a couple of ideas, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, one of those ideas, and obviously a organization that is, deeply aligned with the Academy is the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. As some may know listening, they have hold 3 meetings a year, and the Academy always goes, and several members of staff always go. But this year, there was a decision to sort of change the way we present sort of those reports to the membership and also to interested parties by creating a webinar. And, what are your thoughts on sort of the change in that direction?
A great question, Ted. I think, even from my first rodeo here at the Academy, the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, was always that central audience that we were looking to really engage and influence. And for those in our listening audience who have not had the pleasure of an NAIC meeting, maybe just a little bit of background of who they are would be a little helpful. So the NAIC is a state-based organization, and it's actually made up of every single state insurance department as well as their staff. Some people are surprised to know that each state has an insurance commissioner, but they do. They have an entire team that's focused on insurance and the regulation of insurance. And at the NAIC, they all come together to talk through issues. They create model legislative and regulatory language that can then be adopted by the states that then regulates how we actually do the business of insurance. They also work together to address other concerns, including market conduct. They look at rate review. They spend a lot of time talking about actuarial opinions, understanding what the actuaries are doing and all of the filings that they have to do on behalf of their companies, as well as spend a lot of time with consumer representatives and making sure that the insurance marketplaces are both financially stable as well as supporting the consumers, which is why we are all here. They focus primarily on life, health, casualty, and financial reporting issues. So we tend to bring pretty much the entire team 3 times a year to their annual meetings. And, I think from the very beginning, the Academy has worked with the NAIC just because of the influence and the need to understand actuarial science for the insurance commissioners and their staff. So when we were thinking about how do we better communicate all of the work and all of the engagement that the Academy and our volunteers have with the NAIC, I thought it made a lot of sense to maybe kind of create a singular source of information. I think we were doing it kind of piecemeal, which can be challenging, especially for those actuaries and volunteers who are interested across practice areas. So thought if we do one webinar a week or so after each meeting, we'd be able to communicate what happened at that meeting. We could really highlight some of the conversations we're having with commissioners, with regulators, and other decision makers at the meeting, to include industry partners, association staff, and the consumer reps, and then talk about what next steps are going to be on the various projects, because there's always multi-year projects going on at the NAIC, and it's important to understand what some of those steps are. So when we decided to go ahead and start the new webinar series, it was really an idea of being, again, that one-stop shop of understanding what's happening at the NAIC, understanding how the Academy is engaging, and then also talking about how we do other outreach and external engagement so that we're really continuing to extol all the value that the Academy brings and how everybody else within the insurance ecosystem can really take advantage of the expertise that we bring and how to chime in.
Well, I mean, it is, I think, and you talked about this, but, NAIC, that in some ways the webinar is really providing a behind the curtain look at sort of what goes on, right? Because I think a lot of folks, it's a little bit of a mystery to them. So it has really, I think, did serve in its first episode, and hopefully going forward will continue to serve as sort of a view into a important conference for the Academy and its membership. So that's a whole list of a bunch of new developments, right? But we kind of had an oldie but a goodie to come back in full force, at least in person, in April when we conducted the annual Hill visits. And given your recent return to the Academy, what were your thoughts on that event?
Hill visits are one of those things that are both terrifying and exhilarating, all wrapped into one. I was really happy this year because we had great weather for it, and I've been snowed and iced out, which is always kind of scary. But I think, when I think about Hill visits in the Academy, it's always a great opportunity for our volunteers to actually, as you said, get in front in person of these people that we call Congress and congressional staffers, to hear from them. And so this year we actually changed things up because apparently I can't help but tinker with everything that the Academy does these days. So rather than having individual Hill visits by practice council, we actually combined 3 of the practice councils into one. So we had approximately 30 volunteers across the Health Practice Council, the Casualty Practice Council, and RMFRC, our Risk Management and Financial Reporting Council, march on Washington, which was great. We were here for about 2.5 days. We had a series of meetings on the Hill, which in DC vocabulary, that means we were meeting with folks who represented individual Congress people as well as committee staff. We were also meeting with some agency folks. We had some meetings with White House, and then we also met with other stakeholders just here in DC, like Kaiser Family Foundation. And I think you were right. What we heard and what we saw was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement for actually being in person and sitting across from tables and exchanging ideas. And what's great about Hill visits is that it's an opportunity for us to really talk about what's on our agenda for the next year. So we're able to talk about external events like our ERISA at 50 series that's ongoing for this year, talking about, just as the title would suggest, the 50th anniversary of ERISA. So highlighting a symposium that we held this month, we're doing a series of webinars, and we'll have some issue briefs that will be talking about how ERISA really helps to impact both retirement security and healthcare. Also at the Hill visits, we were talking about upcoming work projects. So talking a lot about the clearinghouse and some of those mega issues like AI and cyber. We were also talking about some work products that are coming up on extreme events and flood. We were talking about a lot of the comment letters that the Health Practice Council had submitted earlier this year in response to some proposed regulations. And then more importantly, at least from my perspective, is it gives us an opportunity to ask staff and those congressional offices, what's on their radar? What are they thinking about in the next 12 to 18 months? And granted, it can be somewhat challenging for them, especially in a presidential election cycle, just because we're not really sure what's going on. But it means that they get a little bit creative and we start talking about issues that maybe they haven't been working on, or issues where we might see a little bit more bipartisanship. See if I can say that word 3 times fast. And are there opportunities where we can maybe move the dial on issues where everyone agrees something needs to happen, but it's a little bit safer on a political spectrum to do something now versus waiting until we get into a new administration. So I think overall it was really great. Would definitely encourage anyone who's ever interested in participating in Hill visits to let us know. We're always looking for a few enthusiastic volunteers. And if nothing else, I'm looking forward to next year, hoping that we'll do even bigger and better things.
So just wanted to remind listeners that ERISA is short for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, for those who might be less familiar with the Washington acronym alphabet soup that does tend to follow us around no matter how hard we try to get around it, including certainly myself. Well, we talked a whole bunch about different outreach vehicles. Some of them new, and some returning to like the Hill visits, things that the Academy has been doing. But what really is the goal of all these additional outreach efforts?
Wow, that is a complicated question, but let's see if I can give you a short and sweet answer, Ted. The goal of all of this additional outreach is really taking us back to the Academy's mission, right? So if we're serving the public and the U.S. actuarial profession, and we're providing leadership and expertise and advice on risk and financial security issues, does anybody know what we're doing if we're not talking about it and getting that information out there? And so when we're talking about additional outreach, it's really thinking creatively about how we tell our story. Because I think sometimes the worst thing that we can do is create these fantastic work products that really delve deep into an issue that offers some fantastic and powerful insights and potential solutions to some of the issues of the day. But if nobody knows that it's there, have we really turned the dial on anything? And in public policy land, which is where I've spent the bulk of my career, if you have answers but nobody knows about it, you're not doing your job. So I think as we're talking about additional outreach, we're really looking to kind of make sure that all of the effort and passion that our volunteers and our members show through the practice councils finds its way to policymakers and other stakeholders and is actually used to improve the lives of ourselves, of our neighbors, of the community, of the nation, not to get too twinkle-eyed and cherry pie about it. But, that is at the end of the day what it is that we're here to do. And by trying to be creative and consistent, trying to show all of the perspectives and the variety of ways to plug in, it just makes sense, right? And especially these days, where there are so many ways of getting information, and we all do this all day, every day. So trying to take advantage of how we communicate just as a people, be it through podcasts, be it through a blog. I don't know that I'm ready to take us to TikTok yet, but I am the first one to put everything on LinkedIn, right? So being able to communicate and just give everybody the opportunity to get as much information, go as deep as they want to, is really, really important. And it's important not just for our stakeholders, but for our members, because a lot of our members and our volunteers either know new actuaries who are just getting into the game and are still trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. We are talking about folks who might be looking to do career changes or have been asked to, take advantage of a new product line for their company or their firm. And so we want to make sure that those resources that would be helpful to them are there and available to them. So it's really just, trying to reach everybody where they live and work, and hopefully that they take it in conversation with their coworkers and their colleagues and their family and friends and say, hey, I read this great thing from the Academy. Let me share it with you.
Well, we've certainly talked a whole bunch about a lot of different things here. But that said, just wanted to give the opportunity, if there are any other things, topics we haven't hit on that you would like to share with listeners about what Academy policy is doing and wants to be doing going forward.
Well, we would be here for quite a while if I actually told you everything that I'm thinking about and that I would want to talk about, Ted. But maybe what I'll do is this. I think, the first question I always have whenever I meet with members and volunteers is to ask them for feedback. Tell us what they think, right? What's working? What's not working? What should we be thinking about for the future? I always have to make a plug and a push. Make sure that they're visiting the clearinghouse and the blog regularly. We are keeping those updated. So if they go to actuary.org, if they go to contingencies.org, they'll be able to find both the clearinghouse, the blog, and then all the other great work and events and webinars that the Academy does on a regular basis. And if they're interested in any of these issues or topics, feel free to volunteer. Raise your hand. We're getting ready to go into the call for volunteers season. So this is a great opportunity to take a look at all of the work that the Academy has been doing, see where you want to plug in. And maybe you'll be joining us at Hill Visits or on a future webinar, or heck, Ted, maybe you'll be interviewing them for a future podcast.
We can only hope. Well, Geralyn, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Ted, thank you so much for having me on. It is always a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm looking forward to your future podcasts.
Today, I was speaking with Geralyn Trujillo, the Academy's Senior Director of Public Policy, who has been instrumental in refocusing the organization's public policy efforts to include greater outreach to non-actuaries in the policy world since her return to the Academy last July. To view the Academy's Election Clearinghouse webpage or the Actuarially Sound blog, go to www.contingencies.org. My name is Ted Gotsch, and I was so happy to host this episode of Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. Please visit our website at actuary.org to learn more about all we do here at the Academy. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast at your favorite podcast platform. Thank you very much.